Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Strip by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people. And I am very, very excited. I have been chasing this guest for a little bit. I am a little bit nervous, I have to say. I don't get nervous very often, but I'm a little bit nervous today. I am introducing the audience to the elusive Nicky Ninedoors. Say hello, Nicky.
Hello.
Hello. I'm so excited to have you on. Nicky is a movement artist here in Vancouver, Canada, burlesque artist, stripper, pilates instructor, a wonderful singer who has a wonderful voice, mother of birds, big head of hair. She's fabulous. Welcome to the show. Nicky, I'm so excited to have you on today.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad that we were able to finally align our schedules together. I feel like I'm hard to pin down. Just, I don't know, air sign problems.
I hear you. I'm an air sign too.
Oh, what are you?
I'm a Libra.
Oh, I'm an Aquarius.
Oh, there we go. Hey.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's either one. Like, I hear you with that. Like, I'm always just like, I'm super busy. But with the pandemic, things have slowed down a little bit. So I'm a lot more reachable nowadays. Yeah. I don't know about you. Super exciting. Also, I forgot to introduce myself. I am Steph Sia, aka Kimchi. I'm the host of the show. I'm the host of every episode, every single week, every Sundays, new episodes on sex work, destigmatizing, education, and everything in between. So there's a lot that we have to talk about today, but I want you to define who you are in your own words, on your own terms, because that's just what I know about you from the surface. I feel like I missed some things, so feel free to go ahead and take the mic.
Oh man, who the fuck is Nicky Ninedoors?
Good question.
It is a good question. It's probably the question. It's like, when people ask you to write a bio and you're like, oh shit. I think the most succinct way I can put this is I am an artist. Yeah, I'm an artist. I'm a stripper. I'm a dancer. I'm a singer. I am a lover of small, cute animals and also large animals, but I don't have room for them in my apartment. I'm a loudmouth. I can't stop myself from speaking up when I see something that's not right. Mm-hmm. And who else am I? I'm a lot of things. I sometimes identify as a healer, but don't tell anyone.
Oh. Interesting. You're the second person on the show that has identified themselves as a healer as well. Yeah. That's so interesting. Yeah. Lola Frost I had on the show, and she also identified herself as
a healer for sure.
Yes. I can't wait to unpack what that means to you, unless you want to go into a little bit about it now.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Being a healer. I feel like in sex work, I know so many healers. It is a realm that we just kind of gravitate towards, sometimes before you even know that you are that kind of individual. And I think for me, what it means is one of my, I guess, skill sets, one of my sort of natural abilities is to connect with people. Mm-hmm. And I'm really good at, like, in the club or whatever, just based on the type of eye contact someone makes with me, knowing if they're my kind of person. And my kind of person in the club is someone who isn't going to do small talk. Mm-hmm. Someone who's going to get into the deep shit with me and isn't afraid to do so.
Okay.
And, usually, like, I feel like I get a lot of clients who are going through things. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty good at showing up for them and creating a safe space for that.
Right.
So I like to connect with people. I like to reassure them. I want people to feel safe,
Right.
Whether it's with me or just with themselves in their own bodies, because I believe and I know in my heart that it is our right to feel safe in our bodies.
100%.
So that's kind of how I identify as a healer. I like to facilitate that with people.
Right. And we're definitely going to get into that and different forms of healing as well. We're going to talk about a little bit of movement, Pilates, a lot of different things that you do. And I'm really hoping that we can pack it all in the time slot here. So yeah.
I'm sure we'll do it. I think it's possible.
I think so too. We'll make it happen. But before that, I want to know where you came from, what your roots are. How did you get involved in sex work?
Okay. So we're going to go way back to the roots.
Okay.
So even from like the time that I was like really little, did you ever watch the old Disney Fantasia?
Yes.
Like the old version?
I had that in VHS.
Yeah. Yes, totally. So I lived on that as a child. And 100% my favorite parts of it was anything that involved naked ladies.
Yes.
Like the centaurs, I'm like, you are beautiful, mystical creatures. And at the end, like the demons dancing in the fire. And I was just this small child, like probably 3 years old. And I was like, yes. That energy forever.
Yeah.
And then when like the movie Pan came out with Robin Williams, there was just that scene with the, I don't know what you would call them, pirate escorts.
Pirate ladies.
Sex workers.
Yes.
What do you call them?
Yes, no, I know what you mean. I love
like
that movie.
Appear with like half their areolas out, and I watched that scene so many times. I was like, who are they? They're amazing. And then when I was like 4 and did my first piano recital, my dad is a piano teacher, so this was his piano recital in front of all of his students and his students' parents. I got up on stage and I promptly showed everyone my underwear because I was so excited that it matched my hair barrettes and my socks and my dress. So it's going on for a long time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Stemmed from when you were a child.
Yeah. And like flash forward to when I was like 15 and one of my friends turned to me kind of randomly and she was like, would you ever be a stripper? And I just looked at her and I was like, I don't see why not. Kind of seems like it'd be fun. I didn't start doing exotic dance until I was 26.
Oh.
I started doing burlesque when I was 22.
Okay, so burlesque first. Okay.
Burlesque came first.
All right.
I've been through some things. I've been through some sexual trauma in my life. So having that type of outlet for me to reclaim safety in my body and to express myself was really nice. It was a nice thing.
Yeah.
But also it gave me my my performance kicks too, because I've been on stage doing theater stuff and lots of like classical music, classical singing, classical piano, musical theater, my whole like sort of childhood and teens. I did all that like competitively.
Oh, wow.
So coming into burlesque as like a 22-year-old, I had this need to connect with myself, but also this need to connect with other people in a sort of performance way. Right. And as a creative.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was doing that for a while, loving it. Producing into live music burlesque events with Pandora and the Locksmiths.
Yes.
Which is I guess we're technically still a group, sort of, but we're not active. But forever Pandora. And we did like live jazz burlesque shows at Guilt and Company and wherever else would hire us. But Guilt was our home. That was really special. Mm-hmm. And then about 4 years, maybe about 3.5 years into my burlesque journey, I went through like a car accident.
Oh.
And it kind of changed my perspective on movement and its importance in my life. Like I had like whiplash and it really sort of destabilized my neck. And then I had to start going through a bunch of different physical rehab stuff so that I could not be messed up like every 6 weeks when my neck would just C's and
Oh my gosh.
yeah. So
Wow.
during that time, I was teaching music, and I realized that the more I was sitting down teaching, the more my body hurt. Like and the more I was doing movement, like doing the Pilates that I was starting to do to help support my body, and doing kind of like just dancey stuff and belly dance. The more movement I did, the better I felt. The more sitting I did, the worse I felt.
Gotcha.
And,
Okay.
you know, at a certain point, I don't know what sparked it, but at some point I was like, should I try being a stripper?
Oh.
And, you know, when I started burlesque 4 years prior, I was the girl that was like, oh, I will never wear a G-string on stage. I just couldn't. I'll wear like boy shorts or Brazilian bottoms forever. It's just not for me. I can't be that revealed on stage. So anyways, 4 years later,
And now look.
I'm like, I'm a stripper. And I managed to get hooked up with former dancers who were in the movement community, like the yoga community, and they hooked me up with an agent, a woman who mostly books internationally.
Okay.
But she's like, okay, so you're just starting off. You don't even know if you're going to like it yet or whatever. She's like, I've got this place that's relatively local, and you can go there and work for a couple of weeks and figure out if you like it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, sounds intriguing. And she's like, it's in Drayton Valley, Alberta.
Whoa. Whoa. Somewhat
like,
local.
Where? I was like, where? What?
Oh my gosh.
So I went to Drayton Valley, to the Blue Oasis, and for a couple weeks after some deliberation. And yeah, it was hilarious. I was like, this is the shit. I love this. This is great. And it was also just very, very liberating, as many people who get into exotic dance discover. It's just that sense of freedom. Like, I wasn't perfect. I wasn't skilled. And I was on stage, and people were grateful to have that kind of connection and presence, and to be in the presence of a woman who was having a fun time being herself and being naked.
Right.
And it's like, I didn't feel even like overly sexualized or objectified or anything. I just felt like people were like, yay. I was like, I like that. That's nice. And there was also this like really intense sense of freedom from not wearing pasties and a G-string, because I couldn't hide any flaw, like nothing.
Nothing, yeah.
And, you know, you're just there and you're completely exposed and vulnerable. And I was kind of like, good, great.
Wow.
I don't, like, that's it. This is it. And people were super stoked, and they didn't notice my flaws the way I noticed my flaws.
Yeah.
Like, my first lap dance that night, you know, this man, I like took my top off, and he was like, you have perfect breasts. And let me tell you, I had asymmetrical breasts. I have a whole extra muscle on my left-hand side. I had constricted tissue on my left-hand side. I went and got surgery like later, like years later, and specifically to correct that. But there was this man telling me that they were perfect.
Wow.
And I had an interesting moment where my gut reaction, you know what your gut reaction is to like put off someone's compliment and to not accept it, kind of.
Deflect it.
And to deflect it, right?
Yeah.
I almost did that. And then my brain caught myself and was like, hey, maybe you're too hard on yourself.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, and I was like, interesting. Perhaps I am too hard on myself. That might have been the first time I ever thought that sentence.
Wow.
So, I was like 26, and I'm like, am I too hard on myself? I've been grappling with that ever since. But, you know, that was like the first drop of awareness there.
Yeah.
And, you know, he expanded, and he was so genuine and sweet. And as like the dance continued, you know, I think I might have mentioned that I was like, you know, I don't always like my breasts. And he looked at me with just the utmost sincerity, and he said, all breasts are perfect. And he was so true and so pure.
That's so
you know?
Nice.
And he's like this little kind of older man, just absolutely delighted and in awe of this feminine energy that is coming his way. And I was like, that's nice.
That's incredible.
That's a nice time.
That is a nice time. I never get guys.
That was my first lap dance experience, and I'm like,
Wow.
I'll remember it forever. That's like, it fucking changed my life, you know?
Yeah.
So
no kidding.
Yeah. So that's kind of the origin of burlesque, stripping, etc.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
I have so many questions already.
Yeah.
So I'm going to dial it back again. Going back to burlesque, so starting right at the very beginning. What was it that drew you to burlesque and that particular style of movement?
I love classic fashion, so there's that.
Okay.
I was always a bit of like a corset girl. Like, I don't wear corsets now because I'm like, no, freedom of movement. But like, I loved corsets. I got my first corset when I was 18.
Oh, wow.
Like, saved up, and I got a like fully boned corset, and it was just beautiful. Okay, so how did I start in burlesque?
Yeah.
So I was working at Romano's Macaroni Grill as one of the singing, like the opera singer servers.
Oh, cool.
So,
what?
Yeah. Every summer during Pride, they would be booked out by Fly Girls. So it would be a big lesbian party at the Macaroni Grill. It was called Fly Girls at the Mansion. And you were allowed to wear whatever you wanted. The more outrageous, the better.
The better. Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, really? I can be super slutty and it's encouraged? This sounds great.
No, you're good.
So I went out and bought a pair of silk short shorts and fishnets, like backseam fishnets, and some red sequin heart pasties with tassels on them. That was my outfit. And this woman came up to me and she was like, do you do burlesque? And I was like, no. She's like, do you know what it is? I'm like, I do kind of know what it is. And she's like, you need to be hooked up with Screaming Chicken Theatrical Society.
Okay,
and I was like, what did you just say? Like, what was that?
In English, please.
And she's like, Screaming Chicken Theatrical Society is a burlesque group.
Yeah.
And you need to look them up. And they do lessons. And you should be performing there for sure. And I was like, cool. Sweet. And sometime around that time, I think it was the same summer, I went to Celebrities, and like, I don't know what night it was, but there were burlesque performers.
Really?
And the burlesque performers,
crazy.
The burlesque performers were Cherry on Top and Little Miss Risk.
Yes.
And they were dancing. Yes, right? And they were dancing on these sort of like satellite stages, podiums.
Okay.
And I remember like Little Miss Risk got up and oh my God, I feel emotional. She got up and she was on like point shoes and she was in a corset and she just looked like this perfect Victorian doll. She had a parasol and she had her whole striptease on point on these podiums, like walking back and forth between them, not dying. I was like, wow, that's amazing. And just had this presence. And I was like, these are my people.
Yeah.
Like this, I know this feeling. These are my people. I belong to these people somehow. And then Cherry on Top got up and she did a remix version of Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire.
Cool.
And she did a hula hoop routine.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, and I was just like, I had just started doing like hula hooping a little bit, which I don't really do anymore. But you know, I just seeing these things that I loved being expressed in a way that I loved by people that I felt instantly like I related to. So I can't remember if I was told to look up Screaming Chicken first or that came after I had seen that, but it was like a summer of all these signs leading up to it. Wow. And then I looked up Screaming Chicken and I enrolled, and they actually had to push back that session.
Oh.
So I didn't get into it as soon as I wanted. But then when I did start, I ended up, right before it started, sorry, scattered brain. Right before it started, I met someone through a friend of a friend. working at the Irish Heather's, bartender and whatever. And I met Voracious V, who's a burlesque performer in the scene. And she and her wacky friend, I say her wacky friend because her friend wore a helmet in the club because she felt like the club was too pretentious and she didn't want to take her helmet off and was just going to be that girl the whole night. And I was like, yes. And I sort of connected with V at that time a little bit. And then we discovered that we were going to be both in the same class.
Cool.
And then we were in the Becoming Burlesque class together. And I did my first routine to an instrumental version of Nine Inch Nails' Closer, and I sang it, and then I finished in a hula hoop because I was like, I love hula hoop and cherry on top, and it's so inspiring, and so
that's excellent.
And and like, I don't know, 11, 12 years later, that routine now finishes on the pole. So it's taken a journey.
Yeah.
But it's still like my favorite act to do.
Cool.
And it's
That's
so cool. Those are the origins.
Oh my gosh, such an evolution. I love that. Oh my gosh, that is so freaking cool. Oh my gosh, I love your story. Okay.
I'm just an amalgamation of a bunch of things and then mashed all together, and that's who I am.
Which is great, because then I was like listing everything that you do and who you are, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's just amazing. She does all these things. It's like a mishmash of all the wonderful things that a person can be.
I just like a little bit of everything,
Nothing wrong with that.
I like new experiences. I like being stimulated. I hate feeling stagnant in myself, so I'm always like, what next?
Yeah.
For better or for worse, it's not always been to my advantage, but you learn, it's fine.
Definitely. I also wanted to talk to you about, I guess, fast forwarding now to where you ended your story with stripping and the lap dance. So I know you went to, what was that city called in Alberta? Drayton?
Drayton Valley, Alberta. It's just outside of Edmonton.
Okay, because I was like, I've never heard of it. I don't know where that is.
My apartment is larger than that club.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's something else.
It doesn't exist anymore.
Oh,
rest in peace, Blue Oasis. That's also where Lola started.
Oh, no way. Oh my gosh. So many parallels here. I love it.
Yeah. We all snuck our way into the industry through Drayton Valley because we were all like deeply suspicious of agencies. So
I mean, as you should be.
I mean, I have not changed my opinion since, so.
I have many opinions on the agencies here, but that'll be for another episode.
Right?
Yeah. I don't want to sever my working ties at the moment, but we'll.
No, right? Totally.
Yeah.
I'm already I'm like, whatever. They're not booking me. I don't care.
This is also true. Back to the lap dance. So you had that lap dance. Yeah. It was forever life-changing. And was that like a moment you were like, okay, this stripping thing is something that I wanted to do?
I knew, maybe not definitely. It takes me a long time to decide anything. I blame my Libra moon for that.
But I can relate.
I knew that it was a thing, and I wasn't sure how much into it I wanted to be. And I was still technically teaching at that point, but it took me like one more trip, and then I decided that I didn't want to teach anymore because I didn't want to have to navigate any future conversations with anyone who might have a problem with what I do, and I didn't want to hide anything that I did. I had really cool like parents of my students. And
cool.
A bunch of them knew, and they were like super cool with me. I just didn't want to have to get into a position where I'd have to defend myself. Mm-hmm. And I also just felt like sitting down was not the way for my body to
heal,
be a human.
Yeah.
To heal and to be a human. Yeah. So, I eventually did move away from teaching, and then I started stripping more. Mm-hmm. And then I did some gigs for the agency.
Right.
And then I can't remember what happened, but I think I started working for independent as well and doing more touring.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had a couple scares of break-ins at the dancer houses, like 2 different ones. One of them was like a lot scarier because I was in it at the time, and someone tried to. I was in the washroom at 3 a.m. after my shift. I was alone in the house because the other dancer went to stay with her boyfriend.
Okay.
And I had the window just slightly cracked because I had just gotten out of the shower. I'm naked.
Gosh.
And something catches my eye, and a man is slowly opening the window. Yeah, and apparently, totally. And I was like, oh, fuck no. And I slammed the window shut and locked it, and then just called the cops, like just ran around to make sure that like the doors were locked, but like just called the cops immediately.
Oh my God.
And that triggered some stuff for me. Mm-hmm. And for months after that, I think that was like my last touring gig for quite a while. I came back to town and started VIPing at Brandy's, and I VIP'd at Brandy's for like a year and a half.
Okay.
Pretty much. And I would occasionally, I think I went to Drayton Valley like a couple times in that time, mm-hmm. because I felt a little bit more secure there.
Over there, yeah.
It really like triggered me, and I remember like even being at home, sometimes I'd like wake up in that, that kind of like night terror sort of scenario where you're like frozen.
Yeah.
And your brain is like, that shadow is for sure someone who is going to get me right now.
Oh my god.
And I had that happen like a bunch of times. So I was like, to trigger some like PTSD.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that sort of stuff like kind of made me stay at home a bit more. And then while I was at home doing like VIPing at Brandy's, I was still able to produce my burlesque shows and mm-hmm. be a performer in other ways and go to Tantra and train.
Yeah.
And learn more pole and pursue that. So that really helped me in my other movement journey.
Yeah.
That was good for me,
mm-hmm.
as much as like I'm not the greatest VIP girl, but whatever.
Oh my gosh.
Good enough.
I suck at VIPing. It's not my forte.
The thing is, like, I'm just not like, if I loved money, I'd probably be a lot better at it.
Mm-hmm.
But some people are really money oriented, and they do really well in the club because they can hustle like crazy.
Totally.
And then I'm like daydreaming in the corner. I'm like, what if this spiral connects to this spiral in this movement? I'm like, well, fuck, like.
That is great.
It's like I work really well if there's that one client who really wants like an artist muse type mm-hmm. stripper. Yeah. If I could find that person, then I'll have a good night.
Yeah.
If that client doesn't exist,
no.
Then I'm like, let's hope I make my floor fee back. Woo.
There's so much truth in all of this.
Yeah. So, but it was really good for me because it was steady enough. And I was happy enough, coming from an artist background, like burlesque background, mm-hmm. your standards for money are pretty low. So you can be happy quite easily, and that helps. And I was able to pursue other things during that time.
Right.
So that was cool.
Very cool.
And then eventually I was like, I must be on stage. And then I hit the road again. And then I was like, I must be fucking home. And, and then I contacted the Granville Strip because I had done a bunch of shows as a burlesque artist there when it was fan club.
Oh yeah,
so
back in the day.
So I contacted them and was like, hey, can I audition for you guys?
Mm.
And I worked there for 4 years before they fired me, and then I was fired for about 9-10 months, and then they hired me back again.
What?
And, the life of a stripper. If you haven't been fired from your home club once, are you even a stripper? I don't know.
So great. Well, I loved just hearing about your evolution with movement, with erotic and sensual movement as well, and your artistic journey. It's just really inspiring. I also wanted to talk to you about, and I think one of your listeners or followers wanted to hear more about movement as therapy and how you're able to use movement to kind of move you through trauma. So, do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Ooh, where do I start on this?
Yeah,
This is such a large topic. Okay. So, It is our right to be safe within our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
That is a truth. It belongs to all of us. And human beings are sensitive creatures. We are animals. We are not above being affected by very small things in our lives. And it starts in our early childhood development. So, you know, we all have different kind of like attachment styles, if you've ever heard of different like attachments.
Theories.
When we are babies, even, we are very dependent on the quality of eye contact that we receive from our parents, and especially whichever parent is in a more, like, spending more time with us.
Right.
Most of the time, that is our mothers. Most of the time. So I will sort of speak to that a little bit.
Okay.
When you think of the world that we exist in, and you think of the stress that is on new parents, and then the quality of eye contact that they have to give their child in order for their child's nervous systems to develop in a stable way, there are some challenges there.
Lots of challenges.
Yeah, most of us are not born wealthy. Most of us are not born into families that have tons and tons of support. So there's a lot of stress on new parents, especially on new mothers, balancing their maternity leave, having to go back to work at a certain time, all that stuff.
Right.
So our nervous system is kind of set up a certain way based off of our very initial experiences and our entry into the world, and our gut microbiome. So like our bacterias in our gut are affected by the stress level that our mothers go through during their pregnancy.
Oh.
And it is, yes. So all this stuff is totally linked together. It's like this massive spider web where you can touch one part of the web and you will feel it somewhere down the line, like in a whole other area. We're sensitive creatures. And there are a lot of things that can disrupt us, whether that's having a mother who's going through postpartum depression, because that changes the amount of eye contact that she can give to her baby.
Right.
And what that can do is inspire a blueprint for shame in the baby. So there's a thing that happens between mothers and babies. I'm like, I don't have a child and I know all this shit. I'm like, oh my God, why? I've spent the last like year and a half doing nothing but reading psychology books. So this is where this is all coming from.
I was going to say, like, where did you learn all this? So fascinating.
So, yeah, it is really fascinating.
Seriously, yeah.
So basically, like, when you're depressed, you have a hard time making eye contact with people, right? So if you're suffering from postpartum depression, which is, like, from what I've heard, is absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
It really makes it challenging for mothers and babies to connect.
Right.
And there's already shame in that, you know, because mothers feel like they should be a certain way and everything should be perfect and everything. And there's so much societal pressure in so many different ways. And mothers are taking care of, like, not only their child, but also bills and also, you know, potentially the emotional needs of their husband as well. And managerial stuff of their household. So there's a lot of weight on women's shoulders.
Yeah, definitely.
It's very intense. If you have a baby and you're doing that looking deep into their eyes thing that mothers and babies do all the time, in a good attunement, like when you have a good attachment, in a good attunement situation, baby will break eye contact first to avoid overstimulation.
Oh,
that's like normal.
That. Yeah. Okay.
If you break eye contact first, the baby develops a shame posture and it will go through feeling rejected from a simple thing as eye contact break.
Yeah.
So like that's the baseline of how sensitive we are as human creatures. Okay?
Wow.
So you think of all the other things that you go through in your life that reinforce shame, that make you feel rejected, that make feel like you are unlovable, that you are an outsider, you know, you can feel all those things just from like your run-of-the-mill societal interactions, going through school, going through friend breakups, going through stuff like that.
Right.
You start adding like traumatic events to that. And that's where things start getting more complex. And like specifically, like you can develop complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
Oh my gosh.
So if you've had multiple traumatic events or have been in a traumatic experience for a long time, people who have gone through abuse and abusive situations, especially as children, because that's also basically a captive situation.
Right.
So it's it's because you don't have control or power. You need to survive. Sometimes the people who abuse you are the people who love you as well.
Oh my God.
And that's a reality for a lot of people out there.
It is.
You know? Or the people who abuse you are the people who are supposed to take care of you and they can't.
And they can't, yeah.
Yeah. Or, you know, maybe they aren't even abusive, but they just have their own mental health issues and they can't take care of you. They can't meet your needs as a child. That is trauma.
Yeah.
That is all trauma. There are so many different levels of trauma that people go through, and they stack in our nervous system. So it's not just like, oh, there's a single trauma, goodbye. They stack one on top of each other. And then you hit 30 and you're like, holy fuck, why am I like this? So your nervous system and your body, they are one and the same. So that's, you know, kind of nice, kind of not nice in some situations. It's not nice because if you've had a certain amount of trauma, you know, depending on your sensitivities, all this stuff, and everyone's different, right?
Yeah.
Like some people are going to experience something and they're going to be able to recover from it and be like, okay, cool. You know, they have a more resilient nervous system. Other people are more sensitive and they're not going to recover, you know, without extra support.
Yeah.
There's so many things that go into this, like especially if you start looking at like generational trauma, you start looking at poverty, you start looking at, you know, access to medical care and stuff like that. These are all things that influence a person's ability to re-stabilize after trauma and to heal. When you go through traumatic events, those memories are stored in a different way from your regular memories. You know, your regular memories you have, you know them to be in the past.
Right.
And they don't hit you in the same way as a traumatic memory goes. Whereas if you have like a traumatic memory, you feel it in your body.
Yeah.
You get transported back like flashback style, whether or not it's like a visual flashback or it's just your body has a panic attack because it feels as if it is in danger the same way that it did when you went through that event. Or it feels like it's in danger and is expressing its response because when you went through the traumatic event before, you weren't able to express it.
Right.
And that's a very common thing, like shutting down in the body. Like going through body shutdown is really, really common. Dissociating is really common. There's lots of people who are like, oh, I don't remember my childhood.
Right.
And that's because at some point your brain decided that it was too painful to experience, you know, the lack of love, the rejection, the abuse, the whatever, the not having your needs met was too much to experience. So your brain was like, cool, I'm just going to shut that out.
Yeah, I'm just going to erase it. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Because it's too painful.
Right.
It's like the more sensitive of a person you are, the more that sort of stuff affects you. And who's sensitive? Artists, performers, creators, you know, musicians.
Yes.
Like our creative population. So, and those people are also, a lot of them, I would say, are also healers for other people.
Right.
So we need our sensitive people. We need them. We need them to be okay. So because these things are stored in the body, when you have like a body flashback, you have a trigger or whatever, it also means that they can be released using the body. There are a number of different things that can help from like a therapy perspective. For me personally, somatic experiencing has been really, really helpful. And my therapist is a somatic experiencing therapist, and she, you know, will go, it's like a regular counseling, and then there are some things that she will do. So if I'm going through something where I'm a little bit, she can sense I'm a little bit more hyped up about it, she'll be like, okay, so I'm gonna pause here and let's go into your felt sense. What do you feel in your body right now? And that's one of the things where I'll be like, okay. So then I start feeling my feet on the floor, my butt on my seat, where my breath is in my chest. And you don't have to change it. You just start becoming aware of your felt sense. Because a lot of the times, if you're the kind of person to freeze and go into shutdown, that felt sense is the thing that's shut down. Because you don't want to feel. You don't want to be there. Your brain is taking you away. So creating a safe environment where you can start feeling what your body is feeling and feel supported in that. So like having a therapist or having like someone there who's a very trusted individual can really help that. Right. So that's something in sort of somatic experiencing. There are a lot of other exercises. There's a thing that you can do. It's like a vocalization. It's very similar to a yoga om. Okay. But it's on the tone vu. So you do like a really long, low vu. I'm just going to do it. Do it. Yeah, I was going to say, demonstrate. Yeah, and then you guys will have this in your tool bank if you're feeling like overwhelmed and you need to have something stimulate your vagus nerve. This is the nerve thing into parasympathetic nervous system, into your like rest, digest, chill out. Okay, so the vu, what you're going to be doing is you're going to take a nice deep breath. Okay. Say a nice low, long vu, and you want to feel it resonating and vibrating in your chest and kind of like in your deep throat. So I'm going to take a deep breath. Okay. Vu. Vu. Yeah, you do it all the way to the end of the breath. All the way to the end. And you do it 3 times. So it's very similar to yoga in that om response, and you could easily do an om as well. I talked about the vagus nerve briefly, like I mentioned that it exists. Yes. So the vagus nerve, if you haven't heard of it, is these 2 nerves, and it comes from the Latin word that means to wander or wandering. And what it does, it travels, it's one of your cranial nerves, and it travels all the way from the top of your head down the back of your throat, and then there's 2 of them, and they split and touch different organs. Okay. And the vagus nerve is responsible for your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. So your fight or flight versus your rest and digest. Oh, yes. Yes. This is sounding familiar from my Psychology 101 days. Yes, totally. So when you go through traumatic, stressful experiences, you can get stuck in one mode. The dorsal vagus nerve is also responsible for, your shutdown, your freeze response. Right. So you have like fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Those are social responses that are sort of controlled by the vagus nerve. Okay. Things you can do to bring your vagus nerve back into equilibrium during times of stress, during times of body shutdown, are yoga, right? Breath work, yes, singing, humming, gargling. Oh, of all things, yeah. Splashing cold water on your face and neck. Okay, that's also really good for your vagus nerve. So doing like hydrotherapy, kind of like spa stuff where you do like really warm and then really cold, is helpful. Hot, cold. Right. Okay. Dancing, anything that's going to get you connecting with your body and breathing in a very intentional way is really helpful. Okay. So this is where movement comes into play. This is where movement comes into play. So creating a safe space in your body is really key. So yoga is a very, very healing thing
Yes.
for the body because it creates mind-body connection. I don't know about you, but I don't normally cry in yoga classes, but this last year, I think it was like the yoga class opened up again after being closed for a while. I think it was in the summer or something.
Yeah, summer they were open for sure.
Yeah, and I went to class, and then we started in child's pose, and I just started crying immediately. And I was like, oh,
wow.
Okay, cool. I was like, all right, it was bound to happen eventually, I guess. So, the other thing, crying is good for your vagus nerve.
Yes.
So,
it makes you feel good after.
That helps reset your nervous system. So that's cool.
Okay.
Movement is a way to establish a connection with your body on your terms. If you're going through a lot of stress, it's good to connect more to like slower movements.
Okay.
Because if you're doing a lot of cardio, that causes a cortisol spike in your body and it can further stress you out.
Okay.
Yeah. So focusing a bit more on like the slower yoga practices or like yin yoga.
Yeah.
Is helpful, is really helpful during times of stress.
Okay.
That being said, sometimes you just got to work things out and you want to throw yourself around and you want to run or you want to dance really hard. And that's releasing as well. So it's not like, oh, don't do it. It's just make space for the restorative practice.
Yeah, in moderation.
Also, because it serves a different purpose.
Right.
What type of movement people choose doesn't really matter. It's more about, I think, making the choice to show up for yourselves.
Right, yeah. You make a good point there.
Yeah, because that's like the hardest part, I think, is showing up for ourselves. Showing up for ourselves is really challenging. And especially I think for everyone, but especially for really sensitive people, and especially for people who have gone through a lot of stress or through traumas. Because a lot of the times we learn to minimize our own needs, like to the point where you might go through an experience and be like, wait, I have needs, and realize that you have, in fact, human needs. Yeah. Needs for safety, needs for like emotional safety, and they haven't been met and you've just been shutting down the whole time. Learning how to show up for yourself to meet your own needs or to give others around you a framework for how to, meet needs or respect boundaries is kind of like life's work.
Right.
Yeah. It's really, it takes a lot of deep self-awareness, which is a very fucking uncomfortable process, let me tell you.
Yes, emphasis on process.
It is a process. It's absolutely a journey. Learning how to have self-compassion is definitely a forever journey.
Yes.
For sure.
100%.
Self-forgiveness, self-compassion, self-love. That little family of things where you're like, oh, wow. It's so easy to extend that to other people. Right. Why is it so difficult to give that to ourselves?
Yourself. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like
and the answer is, rooted in our life experiences and rooted in the blueprint that was given to us in sort of our childhood development. And this is not to say that like parents are bad and blah, 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 because like most of them are just doing the best they can. Like, look at capitalism, okay? Like, look at the world we live in. Yeah. Like, people are doing the best they can. Like, this system is not set up for us as living, breathing, feeling creatures. It literally treats us as machines. Yeah. So we need to be as kind to ourselves as possible.
For sure. I feel like we don't allow ourselves to feel good sometimes.
No, because we don't feel we deserve it. it's scary to feel deserving of love, you know, because of the times that it's been rejected or taken away or, you know, has harmed us. It's a really, like, self-love is a very scary idea.
Yeah.
You know? So.
Or foreign idea.
Yeah. Or it's a foreign idea. I've been through deep phases of self-hatred in my life. Yes. I've been through not wanting to be alive, you know, and it's intense, you know, and you're like, why am I like this? I went through flooding my place.
Oh no.
I guess in 2018 or whatever. It was like really, really traumatic, and it brought up so much stuff.
Oh my god.
Like it just brought up so much stuff in the process of like looking at kind of the rubble around from that whole scenario. Like I was displaced for 5 months.
Oh my god.
I went and lived with my friend. We didn't have insurance at the time because of other issues and whatever. Just, you know, just a culmination of a bunch of shit. And then it was just like looking at all the rubble around, the literal rubble, and then being like, this is actually straight up a metaphor for my life. Like, you know, where I was like able to hold things together on the outside and go do a good job at work and whatever. But I was also like really under a lot of stress. Okay. And people can feel energy coming off of you.
Yeah.
So, you know, things just weren't really going so great for me at that time. This past year has not been the worst for me. It was the year before that was the worst for me out of the two. Yeah, 2019 for me was really bad because due to all the stress that I've been going through for such a long period of time, my body was like, cool, we're going to shut down. So it stopped digesting food.
Oh my God.
It stopped. Yeah, no, it like shut down. I had no energy.
Holy moly.
My hormones were all out of whack. Doctors didn't know what was wrong with me. They couldn't. They're like, okay, well, you don't have an autoimmune disorder, but you're reading as if you might, but you don't. Like your thyroid is giving us crazy readings, but you don't have these disorders. Like just a bunch of things. And it's just because my body was so taxed for so long.
Yeah.
And then it just stopped. So that's why I started getting into like learning about the vagus nerve and learning about all like trauma healing and whatever. The book, The Body Keeps the Score, is a really, really good book.
Okay.
And yeah, so that was a life-changing book for me, for sure. Another really good book is The Mind-Gut Connection.
Okay.
That really helps me because I just have I now have IBS.
Oh my God.
Which I didn't really have before. I had some sensitivities before, but now I'm like, I have IBS. So like that's a thing. And IBS is really linked to trauma and stress.
Really?
So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, like, I think it's something like 90% of people who have trauma will develop IBS or something later.
Wow. Crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. Well, I'll be sure to list those books and those resources in the show notes as well, in case anybody's interested in reading up further on this, because there's so much. This is just the tip of the iceberg. So, there are a lot of books that I could recommend, but The Body Keeps the Score is really good. The Mind-Gut Connection is really good. For people who suspect they might have ADD, Scattered Minds is really, really good. Okay.
And for people who are dealing with, you know, complex post-traumatic stress disorder or survivors of abuse, there is a book called Complex Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder: From Surviving to Thriving. Oh. It's by Pete Walker, and it's also very good. And that one, I think all of these books come in audiobook as well.
Oh, even better. Sweet.
Yeah, totally. Accessibility is key, you know?
I'll plug those in the notes for sure.
Yeah, so I went through a bunch of stuff, and then my health absolutely crashed. I basically couldn't work, and I just had nothing to do but sit there and think about myself, my internal world, and how to heal. And every time I like came to sort of like a new layer of a new answer that I thought it was, I'd have like a little bit of improvement, and then something else would flare up, and I was like, what the fuck is going on here? It'd be like peeling back layer after layer of issues, and then going like 2 steps backwards. And then I got to a point where I was like, it's going to be trauma, isn't it? The answer is trauma, right?
Oh my God.
and then I was like, yep, the answer is trauma. Cool. This is all trauma. So,
wow.
Yeah. We're just so sensitive. It's like what the body responds to.
And how the body responds to.
You know, I've done a lot of yoga. I've done a lot of Pilates. I've done a lot of meditation. Oh yeah, meditation helps with vagus nerve as well. I knew I was forgetting one. That time when my health was really bad, I just basically sat on my balcony all summer and drank various herbal teas and sat under my wind chimes and did guided meditations. And the one that destroyed me the most was the one on self-forgiveness. I was like, this one's hard.
Oh my God. I bet.
You know, I realized recently that I was in a basically triggered state for about 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
And I was just in like a heightened fight or flight state for an extended period of time, which is why my body shut down. Because it was like, I cannot maintain this cortisol production anymore.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get any more cortisol anymore. Like, it was bad. I'd like wake up, have about 20 minutes of feeling okay, and then be like, cool, I need to sleep again, because like I just didn't, my body couldn't function.
Yeah.
So, and that's the thing with like stress is, you know, you keep creating cortisol, which is your stress hormone. That you need it in short bursts for certain things, like running away from a bear, or, you know, doing an 18-minute stage show, or you know, you're going to be late for an appointment or whatever. You need like a little bit of cortisol to get you through your day.
Yeah.
And to, you know, it's all about balance.
Of course.
But if you're in nonstop cortisol production, what happens is it starts stealing from your other hormones, because it's like, yo, you're never going to need to get pregnant because you're stressed the fuck out. So we're just going to steal your sex hormones.
Oh my God.
And that can affect so many things, like skin, obviously your sex drive, weight, all of these things. It just really starts getting to you. And it's not just like that. It's also like, it affects your thyroid. It affects your metabolism.
Everything.
The other thing that cortisol production does is it triggers an inflammatory response, because it's getting your body ready for battle, pretty much.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like, cool, you're going to get injured. We're going to have an inflammatory response, and we're going to heal faster. If you are constantly in that state, you're just going to be dealing with chronic inflammation.
Oh my gosh, and that's not
chronic
good.
Inflammation this is where autoimmune stuff starts coming into play.
Right.
So autoimmune disorders can absolutely be triggered by chronic stress.
Definitely.
Yeah. And there's a link between inflammation and stress.
Yeah, I actually suffer from a couple autoimmune disorders, and one of them, we never figured out what the onset was, but likely the answer was stress. And I was really stressed out at the time. Yeah. I'm like, fuck.
That's my go-to answer for everything now. I'm like, have you thought about trauma? It makes it a lot funnier.
But it makes a lot of sense too, but it just sucks.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. So like figuring out how to sort of disrupt those cycles in the body is really challenging, and be its own form of stress as well, which is like very unfair. You know, you're like, I am stressed out trying to be not stressed.
Yeah, trying to de-stress.
Sucks. Yeah. So stress is really, really bad for us. And
very bad.
It affects us in so many ways. And one of the things that it can really affect is what's called social engagement. Okay. So social engagement is, like I mentioned before, is sort of ruled by your vagus nerve. Mm-hmm. And how you make eye contact.
Right.
And it's very subtle cues. It changes your facial expressions ever so slightly. So people who are in a fight or flight response, even if they're smiling or whatever, there are slight cues that are changed in the face.
Interesting.
And people will read that off of you, even if they don't know what's going on. They will feel various things, maybe more discomfort, maybe whatever, but like you will come across in a different light than if you are relaxed.
Interesting.
And feeling balanced.
Yeah.
You know, which is also very unfair because it's like, you know, when you're stressed out, you need human connection.
Mm-hmm.
And
oh my gosh.
If you can't get it because you're stressed out, well, that sucks.
Yeah, and that's such a testament to like how people are feeling this year and also last year,
Yes.
2020. Like our bodies
Yes.
are trying to figure shit out, but like without the social interaction with people and our loved
Yes.
ones, it can create some scary kind of situations.
Totally.
So, yeah.
And that is definitely a really big issue for mental health
Yeah.
during the pandemic.
Huge.
It is non-negotiable that we are social creatures.
Yeah.
Like we need eye contact. Human, in-person eye contact.
Yeah.
We need it. It is literally healing to our nervous systems to have that.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's so important. And we need people to be there with us when we're going through things. We need people to hold space. Basically, our Western, white supremacist, capitalist society is really wrong about us.
Mm-hmm.
Because it hasn't left any room for these types of very necessary human experiences.
Right.
Like whether we talk about like just society's general vibe towards sex work outside the pandemic, and then what's happening now, you know, with, you know, censorship and clubs being closed.
Oh my gosh.
You know, and right, it's just so absurd, and just like all these things, and like social gatherings being not allowed, and essentially sex work being even more illegal scenario.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And we also still have to talk about that too. Because I was like looking at my notes, I'm like, oh my gosh, we also have to talk about how sex workers and you yourself as well pivoting to that online sort of platform, that type of work now. So obviously, like tons of clubs, pretty much almost all of the clubs are closed here in BC. And I know that you sometimes perform at the Cellar Door Strip Show, which is a virtual strip club. I think it was started by Jennifer?
Yeah.
Who was on the show before. Yeah. Did you want to speak a little bit on that experience and how different that is being online than, you know, performing in person?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's not different for me. For that particular event, it is no different for me performing online or in person. Because maybe, like, this is not going to be every stripper's experience, but I could go out on stage and dance for one person and still have a great time. I can dance for people who are not tipping me, and I'm still going to have a great time.
Right.
Because I am not there because I'm money minded. I wish I was. Oh my God, I'd be so much better at it. But I'm not. I am on stage and I am meditating. It is my time to be in my body and to express myself. And if people want to join me, that's fabulous. If they don't want to join me, that's cool. I'm going anyways. So, and one of the things I get, like the thing I get the most out of stripping that is like the most valuable to me is that change room experience, is going and showing up and being with my ladies and being like, yay, you know, and just having that camaraderie.
Yeah. And that socialization.
That team feeling.
The banter. I miss the banter.
Yeah. So it's like, for me, doing Cellar Door is kind of like the best of everything, because we go and set up a pole and there's just a few of us, and it's all safe, and we do our performances, and we love performing, and then we tear the pole down and we go home.
Yeah.
Or maybe we go for snacks. But
snacks are great.
That's like there's no loss there, except for like obviously the income. But like it's such a beautiful experience, and it's like an ideal experience.
I love that outlook that you have. Yeah. I really like that answer. That was something I didn't expect. So that's really, really, really cool. No, I like that perspective.
I felt it would be a little unexpected. I was like, oh, I'm a bit of an oddball here.
No, it's great. I love it when like I expect something and then it's like completely something different. So again, I'm forever just enlightened by you.
I had this kind of like flashes back to in-person club experiences. There was a night that I had where it was a shitty night. Like, the audience was awful. Like, those nights where you're just like, oh my God, who raised you? Why are you here? When they just stare at you and they give no energy, you can feel them sucking the energy away from you, but they're not giving anything in return. Right. And it's like super draining. And I remember being on stage and being angry about that, because I was just like, oh, these people are vampires, and I was angry, and I did like 2 shows, and I remembered like thinking about, like, during my show, I remember thinking about how it was upsetting what they were doing, and it's not that I was wrong, because like definitely it's upsetting, definitely I deserved more, like all of us deserved more that night. They sucked, but I went home angry. And I was like, fuck. Like, that didn't need to stick with me.
No.
I mean, it was a good lesson. I'm glad it did. But it affected my whole night, and it affected my quality of sleep. And it stuck with me, and I thought about it for a long time. And I was like, wow, they ruined my show because I let them.
Yeah, you allowed them to.
I allowed them to ruin my show. I'm like, I didn't need to withhold my love from myself on stage.
Yeah.
Like, because that's really what it is. Like, when I'm on stage and I'm dancing, if I'm connected, I feel like I have opened a door and I've entered a room of beaming white light. It's a meditative space, and I just enter that room. It doesn't matter what type of performing I'm doing. If I'm on, I walk through a door. Maybe it's a different door if I'm singing, but like I come to the same place, And what I did in that experience was I denied myself that ability to come to that safe, happy, connected space.
Yeah.
And I realized that. So that was a really good lesson for me. And I think it also, I think that was like, 3 years ago or something, maybe 4.
Oh, wow.
It brought me back to when I used to be like a competitive piano player and competitive like classical singer.
Oh my gosh. Cool.
And I did that growing up. And competitions really were really hard for me because it's external validation and it's judgment.
Yeah.
And I went through a lot of shit around that in my family. And it was really hard. I like wound up having like a nervous breakdown as a teenager. Gosh. And like, it was some intense shit that I won't like fully get into, but just basically, it made me shy away from competitions because it ruined my love of playing.
Right.
And I remembered when I used to play piano and I was just doing it because I loved it. Not because I wanted to win, not because whatever. Like, that stuff is meaningless.
Yeah.
So having that experience at the club really, it checked me. I was like, wait, I'm not doing this for the external validation. Right. I mean, it's nice when you get it, especially when it's money. But like, ultimately, I'm going to be a performer and an artist no matter what because I love it.
Yeah.
So that really, really checked me. And I think that is kind of what influences my experience of doing, being able to be a part of Jen's Cellar Door Strip Club online.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, sweet. And she was like, oh, I just hope we all make $50. And I was like, I'll do it for clout. I don't care. Like, I'll do it regardless. I don't even care. I just get to go do it, and it feels great.
Feels great, yeah. It's so nice to have that outlet.
It's nice. It's nice to be able to have that, and I get to meditate in that beautiful performance existence space. Yeah. I love it.
It's a great opportunity, and it's such a cool way to showcase our local dancers here. And again, it's put on by Jennifer, who was on the podcast earlier in season 1 too. Yeah. So she's just an incredible human being. I'm like, wow. I'm like,
I love her.
You're so cool.
She's the one that I lived with for like 6 months.
Oh, no
when
way.
my place flooded. Yeah. We went from sharing a locker at work to me calling her up and me being like, I don't know who else can help me. Wow. And she was like, yeah, like we weren't like besties at that point, but I just knew. I was like, this person. Wow. And we lived in her 500 square foot apartment.
Oh my God.
With my 2 birds, her 2 guinea pigs, her rabbit, and her chihuahua. Oh and so there was 6 animals and 2 strippers in 500 square feet. And we shared a bed for like half a year.
Wow.
And
that's incredibly generous.
She saw me through my flood. She saw me through getting fired. She saw me through, the beginnings of the dissolvement of my marriage. Like, just, she's seen me through some shit, let me tell you. And she is an amazing human being who I have forever deep love for and just mad respect.
She is solid. And also listen to the episode
too.
She's incredible. But why don't we move over to some Q&A, because there are a few questions that came in as well.
Cool.
So, first one is coming from someone from Alberta. What is the difference between burlesque and stripping, and which do you like better?
God, I hate that question. That is one of the, oh my God, I'm just going to get sassy here, but that is one of the most annoying questions that ever comes across. Like,
it's very generic, but
I feel like someone answered this question one time in a way that was perfect. I wish I could remember it. I wish I'd like screenshotted it, but it was like the difference between burlesque and stripping is that no one in the club ever asked that question.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yes.
I'm not going to choose between any performance style because I don't have to.
You don't have to. Yeah, exactly. You definitely don't have to.
I don't identify as either a burlesque performer or a stripper. I am both. Yes. And I am both wherever I am.
Yes.
Like, it's like, I don't know. You make more money as a stripper. There you go.
We all like money, so
yeah,
it's a good answer.
There's less pretentiousness in stripping.
Yes, lots of pretentiousness.
There's less of the. There's a little bit less judgment in stripping.
Oh,
there's less like morality. Like, we don't use the word classy in stripping.
Right. But they do in burlesque. Okay, that kind of sums it for sure. I understand where you're coming from. Okay.
I get a little testy around that question. I know like it comes from like an honest perspective, but you know what? There are articles on Google that you can find if you Google that same question. And it's like you will find lots of really nuanced articles on it. You'll find a lot of information that will help decipher what the difference is, really.
Yeah.
To me, there's no real difference other than I'm in both worlds.
Yes.
And yeah.
And that's a good answer, too. Like, you don't have to, it's not a box, I'm either this, either that. You can be as many things that you want to be, Yeah.
I mean, I guess another difference is power dynamics. Who's booking you? What choice in music you can make, what choice in costuming you can make.
Right.
Like stripping's more structured. Burlesque is more free for all.
Free reign.
But then there's also a lot of issues in the burlesque community as well.
Yes.
Like there's been a lot of things come out in terms of, a lot of racist behaviors coming to light, a lot of classism, a lot of stigma towards sex workers.
Yes.
In Vancouver, we have a very, and I'd say like in Western Canada, like Alberta as well, we generally have a very supportive of strippers burlesque scene. A lot of burlesque performers have, at the very least, dabbled in stripping, or are doing some form of sex work as well, or are full-blown strippers now. So it's fully in our communities.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of places in the world that really look down on strippers.
Totally.
And there is a divide between burlesque and stripping, and it's stupid. So that.
Yeah, definitely shed light on that in a couple of the past episodes on the pod too. So if you guys need more information on that, you guys can listen in on those episodes. Here's another one. How were you able to shoot in clubs if photography is not allowed? And we didn't get to talk a lot about stripper with a camera, but if you want to briefly talk about that as well as answer the question, that'd be great.
I can shoot in clubs because I am both a photographer and a stripper who works in those clubs.
Right.
So I'm a trusted person, both generally by like club owners and by the dancers. So I have a relationship with the dancers that I'm photographing, and based off of my work, people have asked me like, hey, will you come shoot me at this club? And all the clubs that I've shot at are all cool with that. Photography isn't allowed in clubs because of privacy issues and permission issues. So I just get permission. And also I am a trusted person. So when it's, so I chose the name Stripper with a Camera because it's a play on the phrase guy with a camera.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So it's a little bit of a poke at that concept. We are so used to, in this industry, dudes being like, I have a camera, and you're like, great.
Oh God, I know.
Like, I want to take photos of you. I'm like, please don't.
Yeah, I hate that.
So because I am a part of this industry and I am a photographer, that's where I'm able to do it. And it's just worked out, and my work is good. So
yes,
that's where part of the trust comes in.
Yes.
Just generally I promote the dancers and the clubs, and I do it in a way that it's not from a male gaze. So I might post a lot of ass shots, but I feel like the captions that I post with said ass shots do not objectify or dehumanize the subjects. And that's like my biggest thing with Stripper with a Camera, is that I am trying to visually fight against stigma and the dehumanization of strippers and sex workers by showing what it is we do in the clubs and trying to capture those magic moments, where you feel something. Like, I have watched strippers and cried. I love strippers. Like, I love strippers so much. Like, I think about it, I'm like, I'm emotional again. But, and it's just like, I see that power on stage, and I just want the world to know, because we don't deserve the whack treatment that we get from society.
It's
so
true.
I'm like, you have no idea how magical these human beings are. No idea.
Yeah.
Like, you have no idea the healing that strippers have brought to people, that sex workers bring to people. I've seen it happen on stage. One time I was watching Lynx. You just had her recently on the podcast.
I did.
I was watching Lynx, and I had my camera, thankfully, and she was dancing, and she came down off the pole because there was these women right in her front row, right in front of the pole, and they were just so feeling her, and it was just this like togetherness feeling.
Yeah, definitely.
Am I going to cry? Let me think about this. And she came down off the pole and was dancing in front of them, and her energy was so uplifting that they stood up
Wow.
from their chairs, and they started dancing in front of her with her. And it was the
amazing.
most fucking beautiful thing I've like ever seen. And I was just like, oh my God, what a blessing. Like, and you know, and they like just showered her with money. They showered like all the girls with money.
That's awesome.
That night. And yeah, and I was just like, this, people need to know. This is like, that was a healing experience for those women.
Yeah.
You know, they had a powerful woman in front of them, with them, sharing energy with them, and they shared their energy with her. And that's why I share these images, is because I want to share that energy with people. So even if you're not there at the club, even if you can't experience those things for whatever reason, you can still get a sense for the absolute magic that's going on. Yeah.
That's so incredible. I love hearing that story. I just really wanted to know like what the motivations were behind it. But like you said, everything succinctly and beautifully, like it's just so powerful. Those moments, right?
And one of the things that like really motivated me starting Stripper with a Camera was when we had like a dancer loss in the community. Like, I guess it was like 4 years ago. It's hard. Time is hard. Okay. But we had a dancer lost in the community, and they were trying to collect photos of her for sort of a memorial. And she was one of those people that wasn't really super on social media and didn't have a lot of photos.
Oh.
And I had wanted to have her in one of my shows in Retro Strip Show.
Yeah.
Because I was like, yeah, she's got a good vibe. She's a good person. I like her. And you know, and she passed away, so that never happened.
Right.
And it was just like, I was like, oh. And then I just thought, like, none of us had photos of her for memorial, and I was like, who's keeping track of us?
Yeah, good question.
And then the Granville Strip asked me to like take some photos for the club.
Oh,
and
no
then
way.
I kept taking photos, because I was like, as soon as I picked up my camera and brought it in and started capturing stuff, I was like, oh, we can keep track of us.
Totally.
Like, and I think, you know, having our voices and having our experience from our voices out there, and imagery from us out there is so important to the narrative.
Absolutely.
Because usually our voices are taken away from us, and we are told we are a certain way. We have other people acting on our behalf.
Yes.
And we're very deplatformed in a lot of different ways, especially now with all censorship and shit. But like, it's, so having control of our narratives, control of our story is really important in so many ways. And it's important in a historical level. Mm-hmm. So Stripper with a Camera, that's my contribution to our narrative.
That's so incredible. I love that story. And I know, like, I just want to kind of bring it up right now too. I know this is kind of a tangent too, but that account was taken down off Instagram.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk about that really quickly as well?
I'll briefly touch on that. It was taken down, and it took over 2 months to get it back. That's
crazy.
Hundreds of people advocating for me. It also took me getting through a channel to a person who directly advocates between Instagram, Facebook, and artists. Oh. And it was when it finally got to her and her intervention. If it hadn't gotten to her, I never would have gotten my account back, pretty much.
Wow.
And and then basically Instagram was like, oh, yeah, we did that by mistake.
Ugh,
and I'm like, thank. If she had not advocated for me, I wouldn't have my account back. And and I also find it like terribly rude that they just like take things away, and then they're like, oh yeah, that was our mistake, but they don't actually apologize for the like harm that it causes.
Yeah, lots of harm.
They're just like, okay, well, you can just have your account back, but like we still don't like you. So of course I'm shadow banned to shit on that account. So, but whatever, I just don't even care. Like I can't care about a lot of things. And like, so like that's cool that I got it back. that being said, that was like, I think before SESTA FOSTA came into place.
Really? Oh my God.
Or right at the beginning of it, maybe. But it's, now that SESTA FOSTA and SISEA or whatever it is, SISEA, these are all like American things that affect us globally. Which is totally messed up. Like, I saw someone like call it imperialism, and I was like, interesting, because we don't have a say in any of these regulations.
No,
but they affect us.
Yeah,
and they affect the most marginalized groups of people.
Yes,
they affect sex workers. They affect the BIPOC community. They affect, trans sex people. Workers.
Yes,
and the things that these bills are meant to help, and help prevent, which is like child exploitation, and et cetera, they do not help it at all. No. Like, they do not assist. What they do is they push it further underground into the dark web, where that is completely not traceable and not trackable, and it makes it way harder for officials to actually keep people safe. And it's totally messed up, because there is actually information on that, which is like proven. Mm-hmm. But we have these religious power holders.
Yes.
These religious lobbyists with a lot of resources, a lot of power, a lot of white power.
Yes.
A lot of money. And they are in control of what we are able to do online, and they are responsible for censorship. We are now looking at Twitter.
Yeah, that's
starting
big
to delete
thing.
Sex workers without warning.
Yes, I am doing an episode on that coming up, which is going to be another explosion.
Right? I don't even know what to do about that. I'm like, well, shit.
Yeah.
Like, do I even have the energetic resources? Like
where are we supposed to go?
How many ways can we be deplatformed?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
It's just exhausting. Like, I just don't even want to participate.
It is exhausting. I went over
draining.
a month without posting on Instagram. I was just like, I don't know what to say. Like, I did like my big thing about like, yo, this is happening, and like sex workers are suffering.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I have nothing left to say now. Like, I don't even know what to say. And now I'm like, okay, I guess I got to promote my classes. Like, the need to survive is so real, but it's like you're fighting for survival on so many different planes of existence.
Yes.
Like, it is exhausting. It's super draining. And I'm a pretty privileged person, and I find it exhausting and draining. Like, it's not like I have a support network that I'm like, I'm going to be okay. I'm not going to be homeless if like shit goes awry, like it's going to be all right. But there are people who have not that type of support network, people who have far less privileges than I do, and they are fighting for their survival, not just in sex work and in life, but also online. They're fighting to exist while they're trying to fight to survive. That is too much fighting. It takes so much out of you.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how many boos we need to say to like chill out from all this, like having to be in a constant like fight or flight response, but it's a lot of boos.
It is.
Right?
It'll be a lot of collective boos.
So many boos. I try to make a lot of jokes, almost like trauma jokes. But
kind of lighten the mood, right? Well,
yeah, because how do you cope, right?
Yeah.
How do you cope? So, herbal tea, yoga.
Yes. Voo.
Connecting with your breath. Voo, a nice voo once in a while. 3 times in a while. Petting animals. Petting animals is good.
Yes. Pet therapy.
Yeah. Dancing, singing. All the things.
All the things.
Like
all the things we discussed.
All my hobbies are like actually all my coping mechanisms for having to exist. Okay.
But so necessary. So necessary.
They are. They really are.
Well, I guess we'll end on a lighter note, because there was a fun question, I think. Well, but I think it's fun as a question.
Okay.
But what products do you use for your hair? This person was curious. Because you have fabulous hair.
Thank you. I use Davines products.
Okay.
So I use their oil serum. I don't heat style my hair ever.
Good.
Yeah. I let my hair naturally dry, or I will wet set it in pin curls if I want it to be really fancy, and I'll let it dry over the course of like 24 to 48 hours to set. Yeah, I use Davines shampoo and conditioner. I use like the new conditioner because it is like the thick stuff, and my hair really thrives with moisture. Like, she's a thirsty bitch, you know. So yeah, the Davines products I find are really nice. They really smell good. They are expensive, so that sucks. But you know, I wash my hair like once a week, so that's helpful.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And bonus if it smells good, as you said. So yay.
Yeah, and you know, they are a company that's committed to sustainability.
Oh, okay, good.
So they've got a really good like business ethic behind them. So I feel good about, you know, spending my money on their products.
Yay. And this is not sponsored by them, FYI.
It is not sponsored by them. I'm just really good at advertising.
Davines, please sponsor me.
Please.
Free product for all.
Please sponsor me so I can talk about being a hoe and then hair toss at the end of it, and it'd be great.
One can dream, right?
Right. One day.
And I guess that's it for questions. But before I let you go, where can we find you?
Okay, well, if you can find me on the internet, I am the.Nicky.Ninedoors on Instagram. I am Nicky Ninedoors on Twitter. I can't actually remember my exact handle right at this moment, but you can find me there. I am on Twitter. If you find my Instagram, my Twitter handle is listed. I think it's like Nicky_Ninedoors.
Okay.
Think so? Trying to remember like my bio, what it looks like in my mind. If you want to find me virtually in performance land for Cellar Door Strip Club, that is onlyfans.com/Cellar Door Strip Club, and we perform on the second Sunday of every month. Our next show is on February 14th, which also happens to be 3 days before my birthday.
Oh,
so
this is
come
exciting.
to my stripper birthday party.
Oh,
And
yay.
you can also find me teaching at Tantra Fitness.
Yes.
I do a online class on Mondays at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time, and that is a dancer conditioning class. There's no pole required. It's a very groovy flow of a class. I get some good feedback on it.
Yay.
People generally feel good after. I feel good after it. So it's like there's some sneaky nervous system stuff in there. You won't know.
Surprise.
And I also am on Patreon.
Yes.
So you can find me there, like patreon.com/Nicky Ninedoors.
Okay.
And I've got a ton of footage from strip club shows back when strip clubs were a thing.
Oh.
And I also have been evolving my Patreon to be more of a tutorial place. So I've got a live stream dancer conditioning class every Saturday at noon. And I'm going to start doing different movement workshops as well, probably during weekdays. And that'll be like pole tutorials, floor work tutorials, and just generally moving our bodies and, you know, keeping our minds intact through movement.
Love that.
Yeah, so I'm on Patreon doing that. I also have an OnlyFans. Sometimes there's naked yoga. Occasionally there's been a blowjob. I don't know. There's, you know, I'm kind of all over, but I've got all my links listed in my Instagram.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
I will plug all those links in the show notes below if you haven't already clicked it. And that's it for this week's episode. Don't forget to like, rate, share, review, and subscribe. I've been talking for a long time today. It's Strip by Sia on Instagram, as well as my personal Sia Steph. And we will catch everyone in for another episode next Sunday. Stay tuned. And thank you so much, Nicky, again. Thanks for joining me on the show today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
All right, bye. You're listening to Strip by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia, artwork by Maria Bellandarama, music by Ted D, and photography by Ian Daburn.